I still remember the ache of being 17, the tightness across my chest at the thought of unpaid fees, the fatigue that settled into my bones from too many hours and too few cups of coffee, and the way every decision felt monumentally permanent. College loomed like a toll gate I hadn't paid for, and the only coin I had was time-long, uncomfortable shifts at the city's McDonald's. I took that job because I had to. I kept it because it was the only thing steady in a life that felt like loose change. For 3 months I'd worked the day shifts. The routine became a kind of armor, the morning sizzle of the grill, the rush at lunch when the restaurant bloomed into a moving crowd of office workers and soccer mums, the clink of trays sliding into the bin, the polite chaos of order numbers called aloud. My manager, Daniel Reed-Young, pragmatic, and always with a clipboard, liked to say I was reliable. My district supervisor, Mr. Harper, liked to joke that I had the patience of someone twice my age. So, when Daniel summoned me into his small back office one spring afternoon, I expected the usual, a talk about punctuality, maybe a raise if I'd done something noteworthy. Instead, he told me something I hadn't anticipated. "We need someone to take night shifts," he said without preamble, sliding a schedule across the desk. "You've been here long enough. You're starting Saturdays, midnight to 5. A tug of dread tightened me in the chest. Night shifts, I'd thought, belonged in horror films and insomnia forums. The night had an appetite for small, subtle things, quiet conversations, stray insects, the way a familiar place reconfigured into a stage set for something else. But I nodded. Daniel's eyes were already moving to the next item on his clipboard. When he looked back, he smiled, mild and final. "You'll be fine, Ethan. We'll show you the procedures. It's mostly prep, cleanup, restocking." "Okay," I said. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. That day the sun fell like a slow eclipse behind the office towers, and I found myself driving toward the strip mall where the restaurant sat, a cluster of fluorescent lights burning like a distant ship. I clocked in at 11:15. Daniel gave a short briefing, pointed me toward the tasks for Phil ketchup, mayonnaise, barbecue sauce bottles, stock coffee cups, sanitize tables, and sweep the floor, and left around midnight. For the first hour, the night was a kind of relief. There were no lines, no clattering trays, just the low hum of the fryers and a playlist of soft pop songs that made the empty dining room feel almost private. It's strange how sound changes when the world thins out. Exposed wires of music and machinery that normal daylight swallows. I worked steadily, methodically, an assembly of small rituals. Unscrew, refill, tighten, wipe, rinse, discard. I liked the neatness of it. The job reduced everything to motion, and motion, at least, felt productive. Around 2 in the morning, I noticed something. The parking lot across the street was a small, black field. Streetlights pooled at the edges, but left the storefronts between them like islands. At first, I didn't think much of it. The place had been empty all night. Night patrons were rarer than daytime crowds. Maybe someone had left their car in the shadows and gone to sleep. Maybe it was a trick of tired eyes. I was stacking coffee lids when the feeling rolled over me like a cool current. The certain, irrational prickling that someone was watching. It made the back of my neck contract. I paused, lids in hand, and turned toward the windows that ran along the front of the restaurant at the edge of my vision. Beyond the strip lighting and the advertisements for breakfasts that could solve the world's problems, there was a shape, a black silhouette, the kind that all sanity suggests is a human figure. It stood just outside the glass, no movement, only presence. At first I thought it was a patron waiting for takeout, but at that hour and in that light, a person looked less like a person and more like a question mark. I told myself it was nothing. That night shifts mess with your brain. That fatigue paints faces into shadows. I went back to the workbench and told myself the lie my exhausted brain favored, reassurance through repetition. Then I caught myself looking again. This time the shape was closer. Its position had shifted a little along the window's length, a metallic slide of motion like a hand tracing a window. My mouth went dry. The restaurant felt too small, like it had been sealed and someone had compressed the air. For a moment, I considered going out front to ask if the person needed help. Civilized responses are stubborn, but the idea of confronting whatever was there made my legs tremble. I forced myself to keep working. If I ignored it, maybe it would dissolve. Nightmares often do when denied attention. But denial is a fragile shelter. When I glanced up the third time, it was no longer a shape at the edge of perception. It filled the window. The thing at the glass had a body that suggested shoulders and a head. But it was wrong in all the ways a reflection can be wrong. Edges too smooth. Angles that caught the light like something wet. Its face, if it could be called, that was a void with 2 points of red. Not the soft, warm red of city lights, but a pure, harsh red that cut across the dark like twin nails. The eyes were fixed on me. The feeling I'd had at my first sighting collapsed into a tight, animal panic. It knocked. The sound was a dry, deliberate tapping, and it traveled through the glass into the air as if the window were a drum. First one knock, then another, patient and insistent. The motion of its hand, if it had a hand, left small, smearing rings on the glass. The closed sign hanging on the opposite side of the door swung at a slow, crooked angle. I remember the sound of my breath, big and loud in the emptiness. It felt obscene to breathe that loudly. There was something about the night that sucked the politeness out of everything. I moved, not because I had made a choice, but because a muscle mandated it. I grabbed the closed sign and latched it to the door with trembling fingers. Locking it felt like drawing a line on a map. I told myself, keep myself intact inside. But the knocking continued. It stayed, a metronome to my pounding heart. My hands clumsy, ridiculous stride to make things sensible. I flipped the register, closed. I pushed chairs under tables and stacked trays as if setting things in order would stave off whatever had come to the glass. The music in the speakers kept playing, oblivious. Somewhere in the back freezer, a bulb clicked off and left a sliver of ice scent in the air. The thing at the window changed its rhythm then, a soft, sliding drag that whispered along the glass like knuckles searching for an entry. I couldn't see a mouth, but I felt, as clearly as a radio signal, its attention turning from the room to me specifically, like a predator choice made quick and private. Panic is an animal with its own intelligence. It narrows the world to a single imperative: get away. My instincts, trained by late-night TV and the fragmentary stories of others, told me to flee. I grabbed my jacket sweatslick, as if I'd been surprised, tossed it on, and walked toward the front door without feeling my feet. My key was a small, shining thing I had used 10,000 times. I fumbled for it. It slipped in the lock in a way that made an obscene, brittle sound. Outside, the parking lot was a black marble. My car lights cut across nothing. There was no rustle of a night breeze. The figure stood close to the door now, only a breath's width away from the glass. hands flattened in a manner that should have been human and yet betrayed no warmth. Its red eyes met mine, and what I felt then was not merely fear, but a sense of being picked for some private operation. I was the chosen viewer, the lone witness. It pounded the glass with a fist that left little starbursts of fog with every stroke. I walked faster. The sign on the door swung loosely. The thing raised something and struck twice harder. The glass shivered. For a fraction of a second, I imagined it raining shards like teeth. It was a vision bright enough to freeze my legs to stone. I opened the door. Cold night air hit me like an accusation. I did not look back. I did not think. I fumbled into my car, doors slamming, keys turning, engine coughing into life. I drove. The lights behind me receded, a little square of restaurant light, and in that retreat I felt something else, a thin, terrible certainty that the thing at the window was not simply a creature asking for entry. It had been a presence to be acknowledged, and in acknowledging it I had given something the satisfaction of being seen.